Well, your user's guide to Obamacare. It continues tonight. We're taking an in-depth look into the massive costs of this law. From the cost posed to you and your family to small businesses, even the system itself. Could these costs, well, could they bring the whole system down? Let's bring back Doug Holtz-Eakin, Chris Jacobs of the Heritage Foundation, and welcome in Steve Moore, an editorial board member for the Wall Street Journal. All right, Steve, help me with this. So the price tag we were originally told over 9 years, $938 billion. Then in 2013, over 10 years, it's $1.8 trillion. How does that math happen? Why do we get such a big boost in the cost? I don't understand.
Well, you're going to have to ask Doug Holtz-Eakin that, because he's one of those people who used to crunch those numbers at CBO. Look, I think it's all a bunch of voodoo. We've talked for weeks on your show, Jerry, about the fact that the promise is broken that if you want your health care, you get to keep the health care you've got. But here's the bigger, I think even the bigger lie is the idea that this is going to pay for itself and that it's not going to blow a hole in the deficit. And what we're learning is exactly the opposite. Why? Because healthy people aren't signing up to subsidize the health care of the sick. And so you're going to see, and Doug's the expert on this, but Doug, I am predicting to you, you're going to see massive costs that these people never predicted, and the revenues aren't going to come in to cover anywhere near those costs.
To you.
So one of the biggest costs of Obamacare is its detrimental impact on the economy, and that's one of the reasons you've seen this price tag go up. There are a lot more people out there who are unemployed longer than anyone projected. It's part of the bad growth story in this recovery, and they're going to be on Obamacare. That raises the price tag. I think Steve's right. If we get past the startup problems, this thing is going to be very, very expensive. I don't think there's any chance it's going to add up. But the other possibility is that it dies and falls under its own weight in its infancy, that the premiums are too high, the young invincibles don't show up, and then in the end, we don't get much of a program at all. But it's either feast or famine. There's nothing in between.
Well, Chris, I think the real fear for me is that the program goes like Topsy and gabillions of people actually end up signing up whenever they get this website working, and we end up having a huge tap. And keep in mind, the president said, I believe today, he referenced it last night in a television broadcast, that he wants to put even more subsidy money on the table. More subsidy money.
That's exactly right, and that's scary. In addition to promising that if you like your plan, you can keep it, people forget, in 2008, candidate Obama's campaign plan said that Obamacare would cost $50 to $65 billion per year when fully implemented. This Congressional Budget Office says that in 2023, just under a decade from now, it will cost $250 billion for the subsidies. So that's 4 to 5 times what the president promised. And that's not counting if unions end up getting a waiver, if we now have to subsidize all the people who are losing their plans, which the administration is talking about, if more employers decide to drop coverage.
Right.
I mean, this is a very low ball estimate.
So we're not even figuring the price tag correctly to begin with.
No.
Steve, more to you. Big announcement from Kathleen Sebelius earlier today, this morning. She talked about adding mental health, really boosting mental health. And here's what I don't understand about it. So she said there should be parity between coverage of mental health issues and physical ailments. Now, here's my question to you. If I go out tonight and break my arm on 6th Avenue, I'm going to see a doctor a handful of times, but we're going to fix it and it's going to be over. If I'm getting therapy, that's once a week for years. How do you make those two things the same? The costs to me are entirely different.
Well, you're talking about major new costs. We already know that Obamacare's, basic plan is much more expensive than people thought. Everybody is suffering from sticker shock. If they continue to add benefits, and by the way, I believe that's going to continue throughout the life of this program if it ever gets off of the ground. And here's the thing I would say, every American wants their own health plan. And, I don't want the same health plan that Doug wants. Doug doesn't want the same one that you have. Why can't we be a society, Jerry, where everybody kind of picks and chooses?
I know.
And
I
this
like
is basically one size fits all. And by the way, Jerry, I do not need maternity care.
Really? Huh. Go figure. Doug, I want somebody to tell me something intelligent about this mental health benefit. Everybody seems to be in favor of it, but I don't understand how it works. And the other problem with it is psychiatrists do not want to work for the kind of money that doctors who do Medicaid and Medicare services do. right?
Well, that's one of the similarities between mental health and physical health services. Poor reimbursements will lead to lack of access, and we might see that story in a big way. The second thing is there are some physical ailments, diabetes and other things, that are chronic ailments. They're very similar to mental health, and so they're trying to establish parity across those costs. I think Steve's hit the key point. Why do we simply add more benefits to a one-size-fits-all package? We're not going to be able to afford that. It doesn't serve the American people well. And that's what's wrong with this from an insurance point of view.
Chris, last word here. What do you see as the biggest problem with the costs in Obamacare?
Well, I think it's the richness of the benefits and the fact that there are incentives to put more people on these exchanges. And so you're putting more people on a government benefit and a rich government benefit at that. Combined with all the problems we have in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, it's a recipe for disaster.
A recipe for disaster. You were on Capitol Hill when they were writing this law. Could you see the trouble coming?
Oh, don't say we didn't try to warn you. I read the bills. I read all of the bills, and it was. I read the regulation 3 years ago that said you weren't going to be able to keep your plan. Unfortunately, people are just now waking up to that reality.
Right.
Guys, great job. Doug, Chris, and Steve, thank you so much. Great conversation, all of you.
Jerry.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks,